what we call the clinician effect. You have a tremendous impact in how someone responds to this treatment. So 3 steps. We're going to talk about step 1, perception. We want you to pause and recognize how your mind has been conditioned. Number 2, connection, be present with one thing, your patient, yourself. Step 3, transformation, connect to authentic beauty and joy. But we can't jump to 3 without the first 2. So let's explore that together. Henry David Thoreau said, it's not what you look at matters, it's how that conditioning influences what you. So we're going to talk about that conditioning. And I do worry a little bit about how all this social media, and I'm sure you do as well, and it's been in the literature, is influencing the conditioning of our children. I didn't ask for their permission, so I hope you don't recognize any of these kids. But these were 9 kids around a picnic table in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And my wife and I were at the next table over, and I just suddenly took a picture of 9 kids. 8 of them had cell phones, all the ones sitting down. One of them didn't. So what's he giving his attention to? His feet. No one's looking at each other. And look at what we're doing to this very adaptable human mind with this tool. How is that influencing their perception, their ability to see subtle emotional cues in another human being that gives us strategic insight in how to help them in the future? We're not developing those basic human skills that are so important. So I love this graphic. If the middle is truth, both are true, but it comes from your perspective, where you're seeing it. And for preconditioned implicit bias, a Feldenkrais practitioner taught me this one. They asked, which thumb do you put on top? So if you take your hands and put it like this, and you look down and you say, okay, which thumb is on top? Mine is my left thumb. That feels more comfortable to me. So just put your hands together, look down, see which thumb is on top, and then ask yourself, am I right or left-handed? Usually I ask people to raise their hand. It doesn't matter one bit if you're right or left-handed. But now, I want you to take all your fingers and put the other thumb on top as well as all the other fingers and look down and sense, how does that make you feel? Awkward, right? It feels wrong. Why does this feel wrong? It's because we haven't done this our whole lives. This is neuroplasticity. This feels normal, this doesn't, and it's how I've been conditioned. If I sat like this for 20 minutes a day for the next month, this would start to feel normal because I would activate the neuroplasticity in my mind to start to feel normal. The analogy I like to use is, this is healthcare now, and we have to change it. We have to put the other thumb on top to really shift what we do to get a higher return on investment for the money that we put into it. That's preconditioning, but the potential of neuroplasticity to change our programming. This is one of my favorite studies of all time. All the fun studies were done before the IRB was well established in the 1970s, before ethics and research. But this is a human nature study where they took 8, quote, sane people, whatever that is. This was done in California at 8 different psychiatric hospitals. There was 4 psychologists, a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, a painter, a homemaker. Not politically correct, but that's how they described it in 1973. And they had each of these 8 people go to 8 different psychiatric hospitals with the presenting complaint of, I'm hearing thuds. I'm hearing thuds. If you were a nurse or a doctor conditioned to hear for delusional thoughts, that would encourage you to admit the patient to the hospital. After they were admitted to the hospital, they acted as sane as they possibly could. As sane as they possibly could. The researchers wanted to know how long they would be in the hospital and what diagnoses they would be given. So if you were a nurse or a doctor and the patient came in of, I'm hearing thuds, but there were no thuds, what's the diagnosis you would give them? The way I was trained, I would have given them schizophrenia. But good thing you came into our hospital. That was God. Our intervention, we often take credit for what nature does naturally. I love Voltaire's quote. He says, it's the physician's duty to amuse nature or amuse the patient while nature cures the disease. I find myself doing that a lot. But how do we do that in a cost-effective way where we don't take advantage by ordering a lot of unnecessary things before we allow nature to do its thing? Sane people, 19 days. One of these poor souls was in there for 52 days. I'm not sure which one, but it wasn't the doctors or the nurses who were able to detect their sanity. Guess who was able to detect their sanity? It was the people that they formed a trusting relationship with, the other patients that they went to eat with, they went to exercise with, they went to group therapy with. They start to see them without a preconditioned mind, but one from authenticity of, maybe you shouldn't be here. You're not like the rest of us. It was the schizophrenics who were able to detect the authentic diagnosis through a trusting human relationship. I love that study. It just shows the power of this conditioning. How about this one of derby drivers, demolition derby drivers? They looked at the incidence of chronic neck pain for the general public who had just one rear-end collision on the highway versus derby drivers who would have 15 per derby, and they averaged about 12 derbies a year. That's a lot more rear-end collisions. The incidence of chronic neck pain that lasted beyond a year for the one rear-ender out on the highway was about 10%, 1 in 10 for people who had a rear-end collision, just one. The incidence for those who had multiple rear-end collisions in the demolition derby drivers was only 0.25%, 0.25%. Now, how do we perceive that differently? If I'm a dad and I've got my 3 kids strapped in the back and I look down at my cell phone and I put the people I love at risk because of my inattention, I feel guilty. And where do I hold that? In my myofascia. And does that influence my chronic pain that lasts beyond 6 months, even to a year? Yes. How about those derby drivers? Why are they doing it? They're having fun. This is a positive thing, right? They're, yeehaw, that was a good one, right? That's a perception that's different. And maybe that influences their feeling or their perception of chronic pain over time. All right, step 2, connection. How can we help someone feel connected to someone else so we can really have permission to go deeper? University of Wisconsin and Harvard got 2 placebo studies to study this contextual ceremony that happens. Ted Kapchuk at Harvard, he studied acupuncture for irritable bowel syndrome, and he had a similar process as we did. He had a weightless control or no treatment arm. He had a limited clinical visit where the acupuncturist would just come in, place the needles, and run out, almost like throwing darts at the patient from across the room. And then they had an augmented clinical visit where the acupuncturist actually explained how the needle and the meridians would work to help reduce their suffering. They created a human connection. And then they looked at the severity of irritable bowel syndrome 6 months later, and those who gave the same acupuncture treatment through a kind, compassionate connection had a 62% reduction in symptoms versus the dart thrower who didn't take time to form that connection, a 44% reduction versus a weightless control regression to mean of 28%. That's pretty significant. We had a similar study, but we used the common cold. So people who developed the common cold, we had them come in within 48 hours of their symptoms, and we randomized them into a good doc, a bad doc. We couldn't call it this. We called it enhanced or standard because the IRB wouldn't approve it if we said good doc or bad doc, but you get the message. The good doc was that one who formed a connection. The bad doc kept an arm's length away. And then there was a no doc control group where people with the common cold didn't see anybody. We randomized over 3,000 people, and we looked at their perception of the clinician visit on empathy. Did they rate us high in empathy or low in empathy? As you might expect, the bad doc was rated low in empathy. The good doc was usually high in empathy, often a perfect score. When we started this study, we wanted to stack the deck in favor of what stimulates self-healing response, the placebo effect. And we searched the literature and came up with these ingredients we put in the peace mnemonic. We create a positive prognosis. You know what? You've got the common cold, you've got a cold, but you eat well, you exercise well, you've got good social support. I bet you'll get better in 5 days instead of the average 8. Positive prognosis. Education. We named it rhinovirus. Never underestimate the power of naming something. And there's good research on this, where I name it, oh, you got some viral illness versus you've got rhinovirus. That gives people a sense of control to transcend what's going on. So being able to name it with a name, rhinovirus, that matters. Empowerment. What can they do to facilitate their own self-healing mechanisms? Go home, pet your dog, eat your grandma's chicken noodle soup, get a good night's sleep. What are things that they can do? A big one, and we had to take acting lessons for this, was when we pulled the card of standard or enhanced. When it was enhanced, we had to drop in and say to ourselves a mantra of connection. How can I connect to this human being? Versus the standard card was disconnection, right? I want to disconnect from this human being. And the last one was empathy. The patient, we wanted them to feel that we cared. We found out that was a big influence on the outcomes that we saw with the power of the therapeutic relationship with the most common infectious disease on the planet, rhinovirus. Here are the outcomes. I want you to look at this. Look at the reduction in total duration, 5.89 days, when the patient perceived us as perfect in empathy. And that was the key. They had to perceive us as perfect. It didn't matter if we perceived ourselves as empathetic. The patient had to perceive us as a caring, kind human being. That's what resulted in the biggest reduction in duration and severity of the common cold. Both duration and severity. 5.89 days versus 7 days when they perceived us as less than perfect. You're not a very kind doctor. That actually influenced the duration of the common cold. What I wanted to focus on here was the no visit. You're probably better off staying home and being licked by your dog than coming in and seeing a non-empathetic, burned out doctor. that if we're not kind and caring and we give them the perception that we're not empathetic, we actually could cause harm. Better you just stay home. Have that salve rubbed on by your grandmother or pet your dog, your best friend. That probably has a bigger influence. We also did nasal washings for an objective chemical to measure the immune response. We looked at nasal washes for interleukin 8 and neutrophils, and look at the difference in interleukin 8 and neutrophils when they rated us perfect in empathy. This person helps me feel good. They care about me. Interleukin 8 goes up, neutrophils go up, way up, when they perceive another caring human being. Probably my biggest lesson in this, and I wrote about it, and I called it number 406 standard when I was doing this study, was this girl. The inclusion criteria was 12 years of age. She was number 406 in our study. And we had a recorder of each room because we videotaped all the interactions. And so I could see this beautiful African-American 12-year-old in her Sunday best dress. She was very angelic. And I went up to the room to pull the randomized card. And I was thinking, please be enhanced, please be enhanced, please be enhanced. Tear open the envelope. Standard. Damn. I was a good doctor. I followed the protocol. I felt a disconnect. I'm not going to let this connection form between me and this 12-year-old African-American girl. So I went in there. I said, hi, my name's Dave. We wash our hands. And I was very straightforward. and I was listening to her lungs, and I tried really hard not to form a connection, but I felt this vortex of pull from this 12-year-old girl just wanting me to be human with her. She knew I needed something that she could maybe give me, and she was right. And at the very end, I played the part, and we would always ask everybody, the final question is, do you have any other questions? And I'm looking down, trying to ignore the pull from this beautiful person. Do you have any other questions? And she said this: do you have a family? I played the part. I've got a wife and 3 kids. Anything else? I could just feel her energy drop. And I felt my energy drop. I felt sick to my stomach I still do, thinking about it. But the next 2 days, I say, why, you stupid person, why didn't you break the protocol? Because now, how has that conditioned her to see tall white guys as physicians? I probably caused harm, blocking this basic human need for humans to come together. And that hurt. So we also realize in this study how important it is to open up to that human connection that feeds us the most in this work. And that's fun. And this wasn't. And number 406 standard taught me a lot about that.
If you're a licensed healthcare practitioner ready to evolve your functional medicine practice, explore over 300 hours of clinical training, masterclasses with leading functional medicine clinicians, and certification pathways. Or check out the Academy of Functional Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine at afnlm.com. Whether you're on the path to certification as a functional nutritionist or simply want to optimize your own and your family's health, our skill-building approach builds real-world competence from the ground up. And lastly, if you're dealing with chronic health challenges, visit drknews.com for self-paced courses that help you understand and address fatigue, brain fog, autoimmune conditions, gut problems, and more using evidence-based approaches. The content on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and share with someone who might benefit.